Wednesday, 1st of November. PM. As we stood along shore, having little wind and variable, we saw a great deal of cultivated land laid out in regular enclosures, a sure sign that the country is both fertile and well inhabited. Some canoes came off from the shore, but would not come near the ship. At 8, brought to 3 miles from the shore. The land seen yesterday bearing west, and which we now see was an island, bore northwest, distant 8 leagues. I have named it White Island, because as such it always appeared to us. At 5 a.m. made sail along shore to the southwest, having little wind at east-southeast and cloudy weather. At 8 saw between 40 and 50 canoes in shore. Several of them came off to the ship, and being about us some time, they ventured alongside and sold us some lobsters, mussels, and 2 conger eels. After these were gone, some others came off from another place with mussels only, and but few of these they thought proper to part with, thinking they had a right to everything we handed them into their canoes, without making any return. At last the people in one canoe took away some linen that was towing over the side, which they would not return for all that we could say to them. Upon this I fired a musket ball through the canoe, and after that another musket load with small shot, neither of which they minded, only pulled off a little, and then shook their paddles at us, at which I fired a third musket, and the ball striking the water pretty near them, they immediately applied their paddles to another use. But after they thought themselves out of reach, they got all together, and shook their paddles again at us. I then gave the ship a yaw and fired a 4-pounder. This sent them quite off, and we kept on our course along shore, having a light breeze at east-southeast. At noon we were in the latitude of 37 degrees 55 minutes, White Island bearing north 29 degrees west, distant 8 leagues. Thursday 2nd. Gentle breezes from northwest round northerly to east-southeast, and fair weather. At 2 p.m. saw a pretty high island bearing west from us, and at 5 saw more islands and rocks to the westward of it. Hauled our wind in order to go without them, but finding that we could not weather them before dark, bore up and ran between them and the main. At 7 was close under the first island, from whence a large double canoe full of people came off to us. This was the first double canoe we had seen in this country. They stayed about the ship until it was dark, then left us, but not before they had thrown a few stones. They told us the name of the island, which was Motuhora. It is but of a small circuit, but high, and lies 6 miles from the main. Under the south side is anchorage in 14 fathoms. Southwest by south from this island on the mainland, seemingly at no great distance from the sea, is a high round mountain which I have named Mount Edgecombe. It stands in the middle of a large plain, which makes it the more conspicuous. Latitude 37 degrees 59 minutes south, longitude 183 degrees 7 minutes west. In standing to the westward, we shoaled our water from 17 to 10 fathoms, and knowing that we were not far from some small islands and rocks that we had seen before dark, after passing of which I intended to have brought to for the night, but I now thought it more prudent to tack and spend the night under the island of Motuhora, where I knew there was no danger. And it was well we did, for in the morning, after we had made sail to the westward, we discovered rocks ahead of us, level with and under the water. They lay 1½ leagues from the island of Motuhora, and about 9 miles from the main, and north-northeast from Mount Edgecombe. We passed between these rocks and the main, having 7 to 10 fathoms. The double canoe which we saw last night followed us today under sail, and keeps abreast of the ship near an hour, talking to Tupia. But at last they began to pelt us with stones. But upon firing one musket, they dropped astern and left us. At 10:30, passed between a low flat island and the main, the distance from one to the other being 4 miles. Depth of water 10, 12 and 15 fathoms. At noon The flat island bore from north-east to east half-north, distance 5 or 6 miles. Latitude in per observation 37 degrees 39 minutes south, longitude 183 degrees 30 minutes west. The main land between this and the island of Motuhora, which is 10 leagues, is of a moderate height and all a level, flat country, pretty clear of wood and full of plantations and villages. These villages are built upon eminences near the sea, and are fortified on the land side with a bank and a ditch, and palisaded all round. Besides this, some of them appear to have outworks. We have before now observed on several parts of the coast small villages enclosed with palisades and works of this kind, built on eminences and ridges of hills. But Tupia had all along told us that they were Mories, or places of worship, but I rather think that they are places of retreat or stronghold, where they defend themselves against the attack of an enemy, as some of them seemed not ill-designed for that purpose. Friday 3rd p.m. Fresh gales at north-east by east, and hazy weather. At 2, past a small high island lying 4 miles from a high round head on the main. From this head the land trends northwest as far as we could see, and appeared to be very rugged and hilly. The weather being very hazy, and the wind blowing fresh on shore, we hauled off close upon a wind for the weathermost island in sight, which bore from us north-northeast, distant 6 or 7 leagues. Under this island we spent the night, having a fresh gale at northeast and northeast by east, and hazy weather with rain. This island I have called the Mare. At 7 a.m. it bore south 47 degrees east, distant 6 leagues, and a cluster of small islands and rocks bore north half east, distant 1 league. At the time had a gentle breeze at east-northeast and clear weather. The cluster of islands and rocks just mentioned we named the Court of Aldermen. They lay in the compass of about half a league every way, and 5 leagues from the main, between which and them lay other islands. The most of them are barren rocks, and of these there is a very great variety. Some of them are as small a compass as the Monument in London, and spire up to a much greater height. They lay in the latitude of 36 degrees 57 minutes, and some of them are inhabited. At noon they bore south 60 degrees east, distant 3 or 4 leagues, and a rock like a castle lying not far from the main bore north 40 degrees west 1 league. Latitude observed 36 degrees 58 minutes south. Course and distance since yesterday noon is north-northwest half west, about 20 leagues. In this situation had 28 fathoms water, and a great many small islands and rocks on every side of us. The main land appears here with a hilly, rugged and barren surface, no plantations to be seen, nor no other signs of it being well inhabited. Saturday 4. The first and middle parts, little wind at east-northeast and clear weather. The latter had a fresh breeze at north-northwest and hazy with rain. At 1 p.m. 3 canoes came off from the main to the ship, and after parading about a little while they darted 2 pikes at us. The first was at one of our men, as he was going to give them a rope, thinking they were coming on board. But the second they throwed into the ship. The firing of 1 musket sent them away. Each of these canoes were made out of 1 large tree, and were without any sort of ornament, and the people in them were mostly quite naked. At 2 p.m. saw a large opening or inlet in the land, which we bore up for with an intent to come to an anchor. At this time had 41 fathoms, which gradually decreased to 9 fathoms, at which time we were 1½ miles from a high-towered rock lying near the south point of the inlet. The rock and the northernmost of the Court of Aldermen being in one bearing, south 61 degrees east. At 7:30, anchored in 7 fathoms, a little within the south entrance of the bay or inlet. We were accompanied in here by several canoes, who stayed about the ship until dark, and before they went away they were so generous as to tell us that they would come and attack us in the morning. But some of them paid us a visit in the night, thinking no doubt but what they should find all hands asleep. But as soon as they found their mistake, they went off. My reasons for putting in here were the hopes of discovering a good harbour, and the desire I had of being in some convenient place to observe the transit of Mercury, which happens on the 9th instant, and will be wholly visible here if the day is clear. If we be so fortunate as to obtain this observation, the longitude of this place and country will thereby be very accurately determined. Between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning, several canoes came off to us from all parts of the bay. In them were about 130 or 140 people. To all appearances, their first design was to attack us, being all completely armed in their way. However, this they never attempted, but after parading about the ship near 3 hours, sometimes trading with us, and at other times tricking of us, they dispersed, but not before we had fired a few muskets and one great gun, not with any design to hurt any of them, but to show them what sort of weapons we had, and that we could revenge any insult they offered to us. It was observable that they paid but little regard to the muskets that were fired, notwithstanding one ball was fired through one of their canoes. But what effect the great gun had I know not, for this was not fired until they were going away. At 10, the weather clearing up a little, I went with 2 boats to sound the bay, and to look for a more convenient anchoring place, the master being in one boat and I in the other. We pulled first over the north shore, where some canoes came out to meet us, but as we came near them they retired to the shore, and invited us to follow them. But seeing they were all armed, I did not think fit to accept of their invitation. But after trading with them out of the boat for a few minutes, we left them, and went towards the head of the bay. I observed on a high point a fortified village, but I could only see a part of the works, and as I intend to see the whole, shall say no more about it at this time. After having fixed upon an anchoring place, not far from where the ship lay, I returned on board. Sunday, 5th. Winds at north-northwest, hazy weather with rain in the night. At 4 p.m. weighed and run in nearer the south shore, and anchored in 4.5 fathoms, a soft sandy bottom, the south point of the bay bearing east, distant 1 mile, and a river into which the boats can go at low water, south-southeast, distant 1.5 miles. In the morning, the natives came off again to the ship, but their behaviour was very different to what it was yesterday morning, and the little traffic we had with them was carried on very fair and friendly. 2 came on board the ship. To each I gave a piece of English cloth and some spike nails. After the natives were gone, I went with the pinnace and longboat into the river to haul the seine, and sent the master to sound the bay and drudge for fish in the yawl. We hauled the seine in several places in the river, but caught only a few mullet, with which we returned on board about noon.